7th anniversary of marriage. I found a lace panty in my husband's pocket. He said calmly, "It's just the 7-year itch. Could it be that you can divorce me? Are you willing to?" I was so angry that I got drunk late at night. When I woke up and saw the naked man on the bed, I just took it as a sexual indiscretion after drinking and thought we could part amicably. But later, the man trapped me in his arms. "Sister, when will you divorce and give me a proper status?" I bit my lip and refused to speak. He sneered coldly and moved faster and faster. "Not talking? Then do it until sister agrees. My husband is having an affair. He frequently doesn't come home, giggles while looking at his phone, and is getting colder and colder to me. All these once made me suspect that Ian is having an affair. Now the lace panty found in my husband's pocket confirms my suspicion. The deep red lace panty for women is very sexy. No wonder it can make Ian so infatuated that he even forgot our 7th wedding anniversary. When I threw the panty in front of Ian, there was not a trace of panic on Ian's face. He looked at me calmly. "It's just the 7-year itch." There was no panic, no excuse, and he was very calm. It was as if an invisible hand was tightly wrapped around my heart, making it hard to breathe. Ian's tone was sarcastic. "Could it be that you can divorce me? Are you willing to?" The contempt and sarcasm in his eyes pierced my internal organs like sharp blades. I stared at him for a long time and said, "Today is our 7th wedding anniversary." Ian raised his eyebrows and sneered. He stood up and walked up to me and kissed me on the face. "Happy anniversary, wife." Sitting in the car, I wiped the place where Ian had kissed in the rearview mirror. My temples were throbbing. The pain of heartache and palpitations came up together, making me feel suffocated. I almost ground my back molars. I took a deep breath and started the car. Mom was having afternoon tea in the conservatory. I told her that Ian was having an affair. Mom just gave me an indifferent look and continued to drink her afternoon tea. There is no man who doesn't cheat. You have to find a way to win back your husband's heart and make him return to the family. I told you earlier to have a child. It's a pity that your belly is not up to it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so panicked now. I looked at Mom silently. I opened my mouth but couldn't even utter a syllable. Right. I was too naive and fantasized that my family would support me. Before I left, Mom called me. "Vivian." I paused but didn't turn back. Mom's warning came from behind. "Don't think about divorce. If there is no support from the Yi family, what about the company? Don't be too selfish." The next day, I was woken up by the alarm clock. I opened my eyes with difficulty and groped to turn off the phone alarm. Looking around, judging from the decoration, I should be in a hotel. My whole body ached. Even moving a finger made me feel like my body was falling apart. In the midst of a splitting headache, I recalled what happened last night. My sight was fixed on a certain silicone object on the ground, and I was instantly stunned. I was about to get up in a hurry, but my hand touched something. I turned my head stiffly and looked. It was a man. The moment I saw the man's appearance clearly, I wished I could die immediately. Quinn, who took over Shuriwa Group at the age of only 25, has extremely cruel ways of doing things and is extremely nitpicking in work. He is also the cooperation partner I have coaxed for nearly half a year. The ambiguous memories of last night swept over like waves. I hurriedly put on my clothes and was ready to run away. Just when I was putting on my shoes, the man's hoarse voice made me stop. "Sister, where are you going?" "Sister? Mr. Quinn. When did I become your sister?" I looked at him with tears in my eyes. Quinn leaned against the backrest, looking lazy and calm. He raised one eyebrow and looked at me. I answered with a stiff upper lip. "I should go to work." Quinn snorted. I thought sister was going to leave me and run away. He called me sister one after another, making me get goosebumps all over. I left a sentence. "Don't be late for work." Then I fled in panic. When I arrived at the company, I realized that I had disappeared all night and Ian didn't even make a single call. Right. He is in the arms of a beauty now. How could he think of his original wife? In the next few days, I asked others to attend all the meetings that Quinn would participate in on my behalf. I really didn't know how to face Quinn, so I simply pretended to be an ostrich. But my ostrich act only lasted for 2 days before I was calculated. I was invited to a dinner. As soon as I entered the private room, I saw Quinn sitting in the main seat. Seeing me come in, Quinn looked up at me, curled his lips slightly, and silently made a lip shape to me. Sister. The moment I recognized his lip shape, I just wanted to turn around and run away. During the meal, Quinn's eyes fell on me from time to time. I could feel it but didn't dare to look at him. Suddenly, an old man without good eyesight pointed at the ambiguous mark on Quinn's neck in surprise and said, "Does Mr. Quinn have a girlfriend?" I looked at Quinn guiltily. Quinn gave me a meaningful look. Not a girlfriend yet. She probably thinks I'm not good enough and is hiding from me and refusing to see me. I awkwardly raised my wine glass and took a sip of red wine. Then I got up and went to the bathroom. After coming out from the bathroom and calming down, when passing the corner of the corridor, I happened to bump into Quinn, who was waiting for me. Quinn looked at me, who had nowhere to retreat, curled his lips and smiled silently. "Sister, why are you avoiding me?" My lips twitched. "Guess why I'm avoiding you?" "Because I'm a married woman, and you are the most sought-after diamond bachelor in the capital." I summoned up my courage and replied to him, "I'm already married." Quinn's gaze fell on the wedding ring on my ring finger, and his eyes darkened. "I have a husband." Quinn's gaze held a dangerous meaning, burning and gloomy. "But that night when you asked me to slow down, you didn't." I quickly covered his mouth. "Lower your voice. Is it glorious? I'm a married woman. Do you think it's appropriate for us to be involved?" Quinn grabbed my wrist and forcefully removed it from his mouth. His dark eyes looked at me. "But you seemed so comfortable that day. How is it inappropriate?" I was afraid that someone would appear and hear our conversation, so I wanted to pull him away first. "It's simply not." My words were choked off in my throat. I saw Ian come out of the private room with a girl in his arms. The girl didn't know what she said to him, making him laugh. He lowered his head and kissed the girl. Quinn followed my gaze and his face darkened. He hugged me and held me tightly in his arms. He whispered in my ear, "Don't look dead." I don't know how long I walked. Suddenly, a downpour began to fall from the sky. I didn't even take my coat. The clothes on me were extremely thin. When the cold wind blew, it was bone-chilling cold on my body. I squatted by the roadside, and the scene of Ian kissing the girl kept appearing in front of my eyes. My stomach kept churning. I felt extremely uncomfortable. I was completely soaked and shivering from the cold. Suddenly, a coat covered me, covering my whole body. The familiar smell of the coat came, and the smell of tobacco mixed with the scent of cedar invaded my nostrils. I looked up at the owner of the coat. Quinn was standing in front of me with an umbrella. He looked down at me lazily. We silently stared at each other without speaking. Quinn extended his hand, and his voice was a little low. "Sister, come with me." As if by magic, I took his hand. I said, "I have nowhere to go back to." Quinn took me back to his home. "Take a bath first. Don't catch a cold." I took a simple bath. Quinn didn't have women's pajamas at home, so I wore one of Quinn's shirts. The wet ends of my hair were dripping water, creating water stains on the shirt. I sat silently on the sofa. Quinn's voice came from above my head. "Drink a cup of hot water." I took the water cup from Quinn and took a sip. Quinn picked up a towel and helped me dry my hair. We were very close. I could even hear Quinn's heartbeat. Such a posture and distance created an ambiguous illusion. My gaze fell on the ambiguous hickey on Quinn's neck, and I was a little lost in thought. There was a subtle but undeniable ambiguity spreading in the living room. "Sister." Quinn's deliberately lowered voice was extremely seductive. "Want a kiss?" I stared at him in a daze, and my ears tingled a little. The living room light was a little dim, and the ambiguous atmosphere was multiplying every minute. In the next second, I kissed his lips. Quinn held the back of my head. His aggressive kiss made me unable to exert any strength. Really annoying. He buried his head in the crook of my neck. Sleeping with someone else's wife and being a mistress really sucks. Sister. He couldn't control the strength as he bit my neck. When can you make me feel good? The next day I woke up in Quinn's arms. Nothing happened. After a kiss, I suddenly started crying without warning. He gently stroked my back to soothe my emotions. I cried and then fell asleep. A beam of light projected on my face through the window. The sunlight almost penetrated my body. At this moment, I fully realized that my marriage with Ian was over. He betrayed me, and I betrayed him. Neither of us is more noble than the other. My heart is suffering. I am using Quinn to retaliate against Ian's infidelity to our marriage. I am despicable and contemptible. I don't want to continue, and I shouldn't continue. I pushed Quinn away and got up. Quinn's deep voice came from behind. Where are you going? I didn't look back. Home. Have breakfast before you go. I shook my head and continued to get dressed. I didn't go back all night. My husband will. Quinn interrupted me with a sneer. Since last night, your phone hasn't even rung once. Your husband doesn't care at all where you are or what you did with whom. He tore open the ugliness of my marriage in an almost cruel way. I turned to look at him. Quinn's dark eyes were very deep. It has nothing to do with you. I have a husband. The relationship between me and you is at most a one-night stand. It's not even an extramarital affair. There won't be a third time between me and you. After I took a bath and came out at home, I happened to bump into Ian, who had just arrived home. Ian didn't come back all night. He came to change clothes. Just as Quinn said, he didn't know that I didn't come back all night, and he didn't know that I had slept in another man's arms all night. Because he was busy being affectionate with his new love. The unobscured hickey on his neck was proof. I stared at the hickey on Ian's neck in a daze. I remembered the girl who was coquettishly talking to him with a smile. She was very young, just as young as I was 7 years ago. She should have just graduated from college. Her eyebrows and eyes were youthful, and even her voice was sweet and soft. My marriage with Ian was begged for by my parents at the cost of their dignity. The Yi family is prosperous and has strong strength in Jiangcheng. At that time, my family was on the verge of bankruptcy. If I marry Ian, the Yi family will inject capital and save my family's broken capital chain. In everyone's eyes, my marriage to Ian is including my parents. For 7 years, I have tried hard to be a good wife and mother, taking care of Ian's daily life in every detail. I please my parents-in-law and also take care of my career. I asked him, "Where did you go last night?" Ian paused while putting on his clothes. There was a hint of impatience in his deep and cold eyebrows and eyes. "I worked overtime and slept in the company." I twitched the corner of my mouth and tore apart his lie. "That girl is very beautiful and very young." Ian stopped his movements and frowned at me, warning, "Don't touch her. She is timid and will be frightened." Listening to his protective warning, my mind went blank. Ian tied his tie and took out a box of medicine from his pocket and threw it on the bed. "This month's medicine. Don't forget to take it." After we got married, Ian asked me to take birth control pills. He didn't want me to have his child. He said he hated children. I have been taking this medicine for 7 years. I endured the pressure to have children from both parents alone. But at the beginning of every month, he would put the medicine on my bedside on time and force me to take it. I stood up with the medicine and threw it into the trash can. Ian's voice was tinged with anger. "What do you mean by this?" I looked directly into his eyes and sneered. "I won't take this medicine anymore. If you want to satisfy your needs, go find the little bitch you keep. That girl is named Chloe. She is 22 years old and just graduated from college. Now she is your husband's secretary." My best friend Cynthia placed the photo in front of me. Looking at the intimate 2 people in the photo, I remembered Ian's protection of her yesterday, and a sour feeling welled up in my heart. Cynthia looked at me and seemed to want to say something but hesitated. I told her to speak directly. I frowned and looked at the photo. The girl in the photo did indeed look 6 or 7 points similar to me when I was in my early 20s. I looked at Cynthia in a daze, just in time to meet Cynthia's. "You are still alive, and your husband is already playing the game of finding someone similar to you. I can't even imagine what that surnamed you will do if you die. I think he just wants to disgust me. He has never liked me. Where is there any similarity? He wants to imply that I am old and find a young one to replace me. There was pity in Cynthia's eyes as she looked at me. So what are you going to do? I was silent for a long time, and my mother's words rang in my ears. Vivian, don't think about divorce. If there is no support from the Yi family, what will happen to the company? Don't be too selfish. In fact, my marriage to Ian is not up to me to decide. After getting married, I played the role of a perfect wife. In the eyes of outsiders, I am successful in my career and have a happy marriage. I am the envy of everyone in the wives' circle. I have too many things that I cannot give up. Cynthia saw my dilemma and said to me, no matter what decision you make, I will support you. But I don't want you to continue to wrong yourself. You have never been happy in this marriage. I don't want you to be unhappy. I looked past her at the floor-to-ceiling window behind her. The sun shone on the desk through the window. I couldn't help but think of the day when I lay in Quinn's arms. The sun also shone on me through the window like this, making my betrayal of marriage impossible to hide, as if it were going to penetrate my body and my soul. Quinn's dark eyes flashed through my mind. Now what right do I have to blame Ian for his betrayal of our marriage? He keeps a young girl, and I sleep with a young boy. What's the difference between us? I just want to keep this matter buried in my heart. As long as Ian is willing to return to the family, I will still play the almost perfect Mrs. Ian in everyone's eyes. Save my nearly broken marriage. In the conference room, Quinn sat opposite me, looking at me inch by inch. It has been more than half a month since we last met. I didn't bury my head in the sand like an ostrich and escape self-deceptively. From the beginning to the end of the meeting, Quinn's eyes never left me. After the meeting, he stopped me. General Manager Vivian, please stay. The people in the conference room were very perceptive and left. Only the two of us were left in the huge conference room. You've lost weight. I didn't expect that this would be his first sentence. I miss you very much. I looked at him expressionlessly. I hope General Manager Quinn won't say things that can be misunderstood in the future. There was pity in Quinn's eyes as he looked at me. Your marriage boat has sunk. Aren't you going to change to another boat? Are you still going to die on that broken boat? I was a little angry. My marriage is none of your business. There was a little more pity in Quinn's eyes. You are angry because I am right. I just want to remind you that my boat will always wait for you. His voice was deep. My feelings for you are not just a one-night stand. I stared at him for a long time. The sourness in my heart continued to spread. My nose was sour, and I held back my tears. Quinn is right. My marriage is over. Ian hasn't come back for 3 days. The person arranged by Cynthia took a photo of him accompanying Chloe to the obstetrics and gynecology department. Ian, who had disappeared for 3 days, came back. Looking at his expression, a sense of uneasiness welled up in my heart. Ian stared at me for a long time and then spoke resignedly. He said, Chloe is pregnant. It was as if something had pierced and gnawed at the deepest part of my heart, bringing a dull pain that I couldn't bear. Amid a severe ringing in my ears, I heard Ian's voice intermittently. It was just an accident. I had originally wanted to calm down with all my might, but just as I couldn't control the stabbing pain coming from my heart, I also couldn't control my malicious words. Son of a bitch, how much longer do you intend to humiliate me? You can't control your lower body. That's fine. But you also let the whore you keep outside get pregnant. What are you going to do next? Bring her back and let her be Mrs. Ian? Ian's face was gloomy as he listened to the malicious words I had never said on ordinary days. I smashed the teacup at hand. The teacup crashed to the ground violently and was smashed to pieces. I became strange and violent. I hysterically questioned him, how else do you plan to humiliate me? Ian defended himself. I said, this is just an accident. I looked at Ian, feeling more and more sorrow and powerlessness. We stared at each other in silence. I had a suffocating feeling as if I were a prey tightly wrapped by a python, and even my right to breathe was cruelly taken away. At this moment, the phone kept ringing. I forced myself to calm down and answer the phone. The moment the call was connected, Ian's anxious voice came through the receiver. "Vivian, the photos of Ian accompanying Chloe in and out of the obstetrics and gynecology department have been exposed." At this moment, I only felt a pitch-black darkness in front of me. The shabbiness of my marriage was completely laid out on the table, leaving me nowhere to hide. Ian was also on the phone, angrily ordering the other person, "I don't care what method you use. Take down the news for me." Immediately, the moment I hung up the phone, my mother's call came in. I hung up the phone and pressed the power off button. Ian took a deep breath and assured me, "The news will be taken down soon." His eyes were bloodshot as he admitted his mistake to me. "We will get through this difficult time together." This time it was my fault. Difficult time? Get through it together? I don't know how long it had passed. I only felt a chill on my face. I looked at the mirror not far away and then realized that my face was covered in tears. I wiped away my tears and stared at Ian for a long time. "Ian, perhaps you don't believe me, but I really loved you." My voice was choked. "Very much. When I heard that the person I was going to marry was you, I was so happy that I couldn't sleep all night. I thought that finally God had shown mercy on me and I could marry the person I liked. I had a crush on you since I first saw you at the age of 15. I had a crush on you for 7 years. I married you at the age of 22. After 7 years of marriage, I spent 14 years liking you. You occupied all of my youth. I thought that as long as I became the wife you wanted, you would like me. All these years I have always wanted to have a child, but you didn't. You were better at taking safety measures than anyone else. You watched me take birth control pills every day. And you also announced to the outside world that we had been trying hard, but it was just that I couldn't get pregnant. All these years when I couldn't have a child, I endured the sarcasm of your parents and the difficulties and cold stares from your lofty mother. Originally, everything was my fault. No matter what I did, I was always the woman who tried hard to climb up to the Yi family. You would never love me. How many 14 years can a person have?" Ian had always known that I liked him. Although my crush on him in my youth was not blatant, the love of a young girl could always not be hidden. Just like covering one's mouth, love would still escape from the eyes. So on our wedding night, he looked down at me condescendingly and said to me, "You really have the ability. You actually married me." I was at a loss because of his sudden coldness. Clearly, when we were discussing marriage, he wasn't like this. He looked down at me for a long time, his expression cold. "As long as you play the role of Mrs. Ian well, I won't let anyone or anything threaten our marriage. You will always be Mrs. Ian." I believed him. All these years I have been dedicatedly playing the Mrs. Ian he wanted, not daring to be the slightest bit lax. But what did my efforts bring in return? A trace of complicated emotion flashed in Ian's eyes. He said, "Chloe is just the 7-year itch. She has no meaning to me at all. I just think that we have been together for too long and there is no freshness anymore." I didn't expect things to develop to this point. I raised my hand and wiped the tears on my face. I heard myself say, "Let's get a divorce." Ian asked me in disbelief, "What did you say?" I repeated, "Let's get a divorce. The child in Chloe's belly can't become an illegitimate child of the Yi family, right? Are you willing to let Chloe be wronged?" Vivian, who didn't have a relationship with Quinn, can stand on the moral high ground and condemn Ian, but today I can't. Although I didn't get Quinn pregnant, I have already cheated on and betrayed my marriage. I have vented. Now I just want a divorce and end this ridiculous marriage. How can a marriage where both parties have cheated continue? Ian expressed his thought, "She can give birth to the child and you can raise it." I looked at Ian in shock. The shock his words brought me couldn't help but make me laugh. I laughed loudly. The almost hysterical laughter resounded in every corner of the living room. I slowly stopped laughing and wiped the tears from laughter at the corners of my eyes. "Ian, thank you. You have made all this easier. These 7 years of marriage have been like a nightmare. Now it's time to wake up." I was like a madwoman throwing my things into the suitcase. Ian stopped me and shouted at me, "Where are you going?" "Moving out." I said I want a divorce from you. Ian kicked over my suitcase. His expression was twitching with anger. It seemed that the word divorce had touched his reverse scale. He raised his hand and tightly pinched my chin, forcing me to look directly into his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "I will not divorce you unless I die. When we got married, we took an oath to share life and death and never abandon each other." I sneered, "When you were sleeping with other women, did you think of our oath?" Ian lowered his eyes, and his eyes darkened sinisterly. "You are my wife and different from all other women outside." Listening to his high-sounding words, I just wanted to spit in his face. I shook off his hand and looked at him coldly. "I will ask my lawyer to contact you." I turned to leave. Behind me came Ian's threat, "Do you think you can bear the consequences of divorcing me?" I paused in my steps, turned to look at him, and retorted sarcastically, "Are you talking about the consequence of splitting half of your fortune? I think I will enjoy it very much. It must be very cool." I thought about leaving gracefully without taking anything. But the ideal is full while the reality is very skinny. Divorcing Ian means I must break with my family. I will lose both my marriage and my job at the same time. I also have to survive. So I used all my savings and hired the best lawyer team in the country to help me. Sure enough, in less than a day, my office was emptied. This is a warning from my family. My mother's phone call also came as expected. "I've told you not to think about divorce. Why are you so selfish? I tell you, your father is very angry now. If you still want to return to the company, you should go home obediently, apologize to your husband, and be Mrs. Ian again. Do you really want that bastard to take over your position?" My silence made her even angrier. "I have tolerated your father's illegitimate child outside entering the Shin family. Now are you still going to give up the heir's position to that bastard? How could I have such a daughter like you? Are you really going to piss me off? I climbed up to the Yi family for you with great effort to help you secure the heir's position. It's not for you to divorce just because of a little grievance." I directly hung up my mother's phone. I will not be controlled by anyone anymore. Being driven out of Shen's and letting the illegitimate child take over my position doesn't matter to me. The phone rang. I thought it was my mother, but it was a string of unfamiliar numbers. After I answered, I heard a young and lively female voice. "Hello, is this Vivian's phone?" Intuition told me that the person on the other end of the phone was Chloe. I answered coldly, "Yes." Chloe's voice was a little nervous. "I am Chloe, Ian's." She paused as if she didn't have the courage to say the words mistress. I think people are really wonderful. They can comfortably hug someone else's husband and engage in mistress affairs, but they will be ashamed to admit that they are mistresses. I took over the conversation. "I know who you are. You are Ian's mistress." There was silence on the other end of the phone. Chloe continued, "I want to meet you." For some reason, I agreed to her request for a meeting and sent her the address of the tea room. Chloe sat opposite me. I carefully looked at her. Delicate skin, young, beautiful, obedient, and sensible. All these words can be used to describe her. She looked at me timidly, in sharp contrast to my calmness and composure, making people involuntarily want to protect her. I wonder if I could resist this kind of young temptation if I were Ian. I subconsciously picked up the cigarette on the table and wanted to light it, but remembering her pregnant status, I put it down silently. She took out the examination sheet from her bag and put it on the table. She said to me, "I am pregnant." I lowered my eyes and glanced at the examination sheet. There was not much fluctuation in my emotions. "I know." Tears burst out of her eyes. She begged me, "I know I am not qualified to say such things to you. But I really don't want my child to be an illegitimate child. I love Ian very much. I really love him. So I beg you to leave him." My heart ached suddenly. At this moment, I suddenly felt a little sorry for Chloe. She didn't know that Ian wanted to give her child to me to raise. She didn't even know that I had already broken up with Ian. I asked her, "Haven't you met Ian these days?" Chloe cried even harder. "I couldn't contact him after I told him I was pregnant. I had no choice but to come to you." I pushed the tissue box on the table towards her. "I have already proposed divorce to Ian. The person you should persuade now is not me but Ian. After saying that, I picked up the pregnancy test sheet on the table and put it in my bag. There is no reason not to take the evidence that is delivered to the door. I got up and left the tea room. As soon as I opened the door, I saw the man in a suit waiting for me at the door. He was my mother-in-law's secretary. The secretary greeted me politely, "Madam wants to meet you alone." My mother-in-law was still in that superior manner. When she saw me coming in, she asked me to sit opposite her. Her time has always been very precious, so she didn't beat around the bush and exchange pleasantries with me. Instead, she got straight to the point. Which man doesn't play around outside? But this time Ian really did wrong. He shouldn't have made someone else's stomach big. Mother-in-law took a sip of tea. "We do look forward to having a grandson. The Yi family is not the Shen family. We will definitely not let an illegitimate child in." At this critical juncture, she still didn't forget to taunt me about the matter of my having an illegitimate younger brother. She examined my expression. "If you are willing to raise that child, we will let her give birth. If you are not willing, this child will not be born." Looking at this cold-blooded woman in front of me, she is forcing me to make a choice. It felt like a huge rock was pressing on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I stood up and didn't want to continue this topic. I looked down at my mother-in-law condescendingly. This was the first time I had looked at her like this. "The child is not in my belly. That is the child of your Yi family. His fate has nothing to do with me and is not something I can decide. But this marriage, I must get divorced. No matter what price I have to pay, I will no longer let this nominal marriage trap me." I turned and left. After holding the doorknob, I turned to her and said, "These years it's not that I can't have a child. It's that Ian has been making me take contraceptives." The lawyer said that Ian tore up the divorce agreement in front of him. His such a violent reaction was beyond my expectation. "Then send a copy to his company every morning, noon, and night. There will always be a day when he can't tear it up." After saying that, I finally turned on my commonly used mobile phone. At the moment it was turned on, countless missed calls and messages made the phone stuck for a long time. The calls and messages were basically all from Ian. Among hundreds of messages, I saw Quinn's message. "Quinn, where are you? Are you getting divorced? I have already had the news withdrawn." There were only 3 messages, each sent after a long interval. I looked at the time. After he sent the last message, there was no more news about Ian and Chloe on the internet. I edited the message, writing and deleting, deleting and writing. In the end, I only sent 2 words, "Thank you." I dialed Ian's phone. After the call was connected, I spoke first, "Let's meet." There was silence on Ian's side for a long time. Finally, he said one word, "Okay." Ian pushed the door and came in. He had a gloomy face, as if he was coming to interrogate me. Seeing the lawyer beside me, his face became even gloomier. He stared at me directly. His gaze seemed to have weight and pressed heavily on me. "Did you come to talk to me about divorce?" I looked at him without avoiding. "Is there anything else we need to talk about?" The lawyer put the divorce agreement on the table and pushed it towards him. "You didn't sign a prenuptial agreement. My client doesn't want much. She wants a property you have in Los Angeles, and some stocks and cash." Ian sneered disdainfully. He flipped through the divorce agreement. "Didn't you say you want half of my fortune? Why do you only want such a little thing?" I wasn't. I just looked at him indifferently. "The one who made a mistake is not only you. I won't ask for too much. I just need something that can let me live safely." Ian wouldn't think that the mistake in my mouth was actually that I had a relationship with Quinn. He just thought that the mistake I was talking about was marrying him. I said, "As long as you don't want it, I won't let Chloe give birth to that child. As long as you are willing to go home and continue our marriage, I can give you anything you want." I was still very firm. "I want a divorce." "You said you liked me, didn't you? You liked me for 14 years. After liking me for so long, how could you give up so quickly?" "I just made the mistake that all men in the world make. If you give up so easily, then what is our 7-year marriage?" I answered without hesitation, it's that I misjudged. It's that I was delusional. I said, let you raise this child. My expression became gloomy in an instant, and a stack of documents beside me was directly thrown at Ian. I asked him hoarsely, I had a child before, remember? A trace of panic and sadness appeared in Ian's eyes, exactly the same as what I saw when I had a miscarriage 2 years ago. It was the medicine you gave me. Those medicines made me lose my child. Ian still wanted to defend himself, but I stood up and grabbed his collar. The distance between us was suddenly shortened. I exerted so much force that the veins on the back of my hand bulged. My eyes were bloodshot. I gritted my teeth and said, you killed your own child with your own hands. How dare you ask me to raise someone else's child now? Ian was stunned by my violent appearance. He had never seen me so before. His voice was trembling. Sure enough, you have always hated me. I stared fixedly into his eyes and asked him in return, shouldn't I hate you? His eyes were full of tears, and a look of despair and trance appeared on his face. You should hate. You really should hate. I think I will never forget that day. It was an afternoon. I was taking a bath when suddenly there was an unbearable pain in my abdomen. Immediately after, a warm current flowed down my legs, and blood spread in the water. I put on my clothes with difficulty and asked the nanny to call an ambulance for me. I fainted before the ambulance arrived. I woke up from the extremely tearing pain. What I saw was the pale wall. The doctor said I had a miscarriage. I don't know how this child was conceived. The doctor said that even if taking contraceptives, it is possible to get pregnant. Ian just looked at me indifferently. The doctor said that you also took medicine when you were pregnant. You couldn't have given birth to this child anyway. Just right. I don't want a child either. After this incident, the project that the company had been negotiating for more than half a year was finally settled. The other party took the initiative to come to us and hinted in every word that someone above me had given an order. After the contract was signed and sealed, I returned home. Ian was not asleep and seemed to be waiting for me. He asked me, did you settle it? At this moment, I fully understood that this was the Yi family's compensation for my loss of the child. The child I lost brought a huge contract to the company. This is the Yi family's compensation for me. My whole body was stiff, and there was a short-term tinnitus in my ears. I seemed to hear the sound of dignity falling to the ground and being smashed to pieces. My mother finally found my apartment. Her slap landed hard on my face. I am the process of my growing up. I can't remember how many slaps like this I have received. If I didn't pass an exam, my illegitimate younger brother Henry would be slapped. If I did something that didn't meet her wishes, I would be slapped. At my age, I am still being slapped. She hates having to raise an illegitimate child. She hates that I am not a boy. She hates that her husband is unfaithful to her, making her a joke and a topic of conversation among people. Immediately after that, her scolding resounded in every corner of the corridor. For a person who cares so much about face like her, she couldn't even wait to enter the room before taking action. Did you go to see Ian with a lawyer? Do you really want to drive your mother to death? Your mother-in-law has told me that as long as you don't want that child, it won't be born. The Yi family has given you enough face. What else do you want? It's just an illegitimate child. Just raise it. I, who had been silent all this time, was enraged by her words, and a burst of resentment rushed to my head. I stared firmly into her eyes and tried hard to control my voice from trembling. I won't be like you, enduring humiliation and raising a bastard just for others to call me Mrs. Henry. I will inherit your jewels, your real estate, and all your wealth. I paused and said firmly, but I will definitely not inherit your misfortune. Henry couldn't wait to move into my office. He also sent me a photo and said that he had changed the sofa in my office. He also said that if I couldn't find a job in the future, I could ask him and he would help me find a job. Since the day Henry was brought back to the Shen family, he and I have been competitors. He is not as smart as I am nor as hardworking as I am, so he loses to me every time. If he didn't take the opportunity to kick me when I'm down, I would find it strange. I didn't get angry and scold him. Instead, I calmly blocked him. Without the support of the Yi family, under the leadership of a mediocre person like Henry, how long can the Shen family linger on? Cynthia called to remind me that I need to attend a dinner party today. I know you and Ian are having a divorce now and don't want to show up in public. If you don't want to come, it's fine. No need. I'm just getting a divorce. I haven't killed anyone. I promise to support you. Don't worry. Sure enough, as soon as I appeared in the banquet hall, everyone's eyes instantly focused on me. Gossiping is human nature. I don't blame them. Because I used to be one of them. I took a sip of champagne and looked around the whole hall. Just then, I happened to meet a pair of pitch-black eyes. I casually looked away and didn't look in Quinn's direction anymore. Everyone was silently praying in their hearts that Ian would appear so that they could watch a free drama. Unfortunately, until the end of the banquet, Ian didn't appear. They didn't see the Shura field they wanted to see. I even felt sorry for them. Even in the bathroom, I heard people discussing me and Ian. How could Vivian, who is so proud, be willing to raise an illegitimate child? Usually pretending to have a happy family, but it still turns into chaos. With warm water pouring on the back of my hand, I quietly listened to the conversation of two women. Vivian marrying Ian is a marriage up. I thought Vivian would endure humiliation. But it turns out that she even had a lawyer draw up a divorce agreement. Oh, then Vivian must have made a fortune. The Yi family is so rich. Vivian must take a layer of skin off the Yi family. The woman's voice got stuck in her throat. She looked at me awkwardly with her hand still on the doorknob. I looked at her casually and replied, I didn't ask for much. Not everyone can take a layer of skin off the Yi family. The two women looked at each other. I turned and left. I hid in a corner to get some fresh air and sober up. There was a sound behind me. I looked over in the direction of the sound. The man's facial features were hidden in the darkness, and his left shoulder was casually leaning against the door panel. I squinted to see the man's appearance. The man's muffled laughter came. That lazy and contemptuous air, I could recognize it even if it turned to ashes. I silently rolled my eyes. President Quinn, are you trying to scare people by dressing up as a ghost? He asked with a smile. Did I scare you? I raised my eyebrows in disdain. I don't think so. It's a pity. I really want to see the frightened look on my sister. There was a hint of banter in his tone. He took a few steps forward, lowered his eyes, and stared at the hair at my temples that trembled gently because of his breath. You are getting a divorce. I subconsciously took a step back to widen the distance between us. Yes, I am getting a divorce. I reminded him, if someone takes a photo of me and you at this critical moment, it will affect my division of property. Quinn raised an eyebrow and looked at me, taking 2 steps back and widening the distance between us even more. Then we really should keep our distance. My fault. He readily admitted his mistake. Before your divorce judgment comes down, I will pretend to be unfamiliar with you. I was a bit drunk. Looking at Quinn's handsome face, I suddenly burst out laughing. The questions that had been puzzling me these days kept swirling in my mind. I asked him, did you have someone release the photos of Ian and Chloe? The Yi family is extremely powerful. If no one had instigated it, no one would dare to expose the photos. And the only one who can oppose the Yi family is the Chi family. Quinn frowned. I admit I'm selfish. I just want to have you. No matter what despicable means I use, I must have you. I long to have you. No one and nothing can change my longing for you. But I will definitely not let you become a laughing stock in everyone's eyes or a topic of conversation after meals. I like you. I will not do anything to hurt you. He stared at me, his eyes full of seriousness. So, it wasn't me? I was a bit embarrassed and looked away. Quinn chuckled. An umbrella won't fall from the sky. That umbrella was sent to you by my order. I frowned in confusion. He explained my doubt. Half a year ago, when you were standing in the rain and crying in front of the hotel, someone gave you an umbrella. I remembered what happened that day. That was the first time I suspected Ian was having an affair. I saw him enter the hotel with a woman in his arms. I called and asked him where he was. He said he was working overtime. While answering my question, he kissed the woman. At that time, I felt like the sky was falling. Unconsciously, I had been standing in the rain, ignoring the eyes of others. At that time, someone handed me an umbrella. It turned out to be on Quinn's instructions. I know you are a very proud person and wouldn't want your partners to see you in a messy state. So I didn't go forward in person. At that time, I had only seen you twice. I already knew to protect your pride. But what about your husband? He will only trample on your pride and make you a joke after meals. Ian still refuses to sign the divorce agreement. Endless news reaches my ears. Ian gets drunk every night and always murmurs my name. Chloe had an accident. The child is gone, and even her uterus couldn't be saved. Cynthia said sarcastically, "Do they really think we are all fools? The Yi family is showing their stance to you. Punishing the mistress, even removing the uterus." I was silent for a long time and asked her, "What about Ian? As the chief culprit, is he just hiding away beautifully?" Cynthia instantly fell silent. The Yi family is really too terrifying. I don't want to continue to waste my future in such a family. I chat with Quinn from time to time, and our relationship is much closer than before. Henry soon made a major mistake. The Chi family mercilessly withdrew its investment, leaving a mess for Shen's. When Quinn talked about Henry, his tone was full of contempt. Shen's will definitely go bankrupt in just a few years under his hands. I really don't know where his mind is. Quinn didn't need to say it clearly. I also know that he is venting my anger. If I had made the same mistake, Quinn would definitely not withdraw his investment so resolutely. Ian's endless stream of reconciliation text messages kept being sent to my phone. Eventually, I got a bit annoyed and directly turned off my phone. I don't know who gave Ian a bad idea. He started squatting in front of my house every day. I could see him as soon as I walked to the window. I thought he would give up after 2 days, but unexpectedly, he persisted for a long time. When I got out of the car, Ian saw me and dropped the cigarette between his fingertips. I was a bit helpless. "Don't you go to work, wife?" He called me in a low voice. I frowned. "If you refuse to sign the divorce agreement, I will file for divorce through litigation. At that time, it will be bad for everyone, especially you. I am no longer at Shen's. I don't care whether Shen's and Ye's stocks will plummet because of this, but you can't do it. The people of the Yi family won't allow you to do this either." Ian pressed his lips tightly. "I don't care. I just want you to come back to me. Chloe has been dealt with. I will never do anything to hurt you again. I now realize that I have always loved you. I already know I was wrong." His voice was tinged with pleading. "I will never force you to take medicine again. If you want a few children, we will have as many as you want. I promise I will be good to you." I looked at him coldly. What he promised to give me now is what I have been longing for in 7 years of marriage. But now, I don't want anything anymore. I just want freedom. No longer Ian's wife, the virtuous wife in others' eyes. "But Vivian." I still looked at him coldly. "I only ask you to sign the divorce agreement. Otherwise, I will file a lawsuit." Ian stared at me. The complex emotions in his eyes surged like an undercurrent. In the next second, he actually knelt down straight. I glanced down at him and turned around and left without hesitation. On a rainy night with pouring rain, a domineering president who kneels down to ask his ex-wife to reconcile. It's just like the romance novels I read when I was young. It's simply the standard configuration of a chasing wife crematorium. At this time, the heroine usually softens her heart. But in real life, I will only think Ian is stupid. His knees are not so precious in my eyes. I sat in silence all night. Ian knelt downstairs all night. When the sky was just dawning, Ian's secretary took him away. Even from a distance, I could see that his face was extremely pale and he was in a mess. Ian was sick and had pneumonia. Mrs. Yi called me. In the call, she lost her usual arrogant air and vaguely had a hint of ingratiation. Instead, I was a bit unaccustomed to it. "Ian is quite seriously ill. He has been murmuring your name. Can you come to the hospital to see him?" My tone was cold and distant. "Mrs. Yi, I think Ian and I are not in a relationship where I can visit him in the hospital now. Mrs. Yi obviously paused on the other end of the phone. After all, I have been very docile all these years and never refused any of their requests. Mrs. Yi, I have already told Ian that if he is unwilling to divorce by agreement, I will file a lawsuit. If we go through litigation for divorce, it will definitely have a negative impact on the Yi family. You'd better persuade him to sign the agreement as soon as possible. After hanging up the phone, I glanced at Quinn, who was sitting opposite me and drinking. Quinn looked up at me. Are you going? I shook my head. No. His tone was a bit sarcastic. I heard that he knelt downstairs at your house all night and then got sick. He is so deeply in love that he can even think of such a move. I chuckled and filled his wine glass. Quinn was sullen. That surname G is really ignorant. Only when he signs the divorce agreement can I pursue you openly. His burning gaze fell on my face, and I blushed under his gaze. Sure enough, the burning love of a young cub will always make an old ant's heart flutter. Probably due to Mrs. Ye's persuasion, Ian relented. He said he was willing to sign the divorce agreement. He didn't look well and was haggard. In the past, I would have been extremely distressed. I signed the agreement without hesitation. My decisiveness seemed to sting him. Are you so eager to divorce me? I said, yes, it's been a long time. Ian's eyes darkened, and his voice was a bit low. You have been wronged all these years. I didn't refute him because I didn't want to recall any more the pain I suffered in this marriage. I only want a new future, a future free from emotional and family constraints. At this age, I finally want to live for myself once. I know it's not too late. Ian and I walked out side by side from the Civil Affairs Bureau. Looking at the divorce certificate in my hand, it seemed that the air was much sweeter than before. On the contrary, Ian was like an eggplant beaten by frost, with only sadness on his face. At a glance, I saw the black Bentley not far away. That was Quinn's car. He said he would take me to celebrate my divorce. I turned to look at Ian. I said to him, do you know why I didn't forcefully take half of your fortune when you made a mistake? Ian looked at me blankly. Because you are not a greedy woman. I chuckled. Ian had shared the same bed with me for 7 years. Just as Quinn said, he really didn't understand me at all. No, I have always been a very greedy person. I originally wanted to tell him that I had also been unfaithful so that I could hurt him. But then I suddenly remembered that the real estate had not been transferred yet. I'd better tell him after the transfer. In the end, I just managed to say, take care. Ian's mouth moved, but he didn't utter a syllable. I turned and left without looking at Ian again. I got into Quinn's car. Quinn looked at the divorce certificate in my hand and said to me, congratulations. Looking at the divorce certificate in my hand, I couldn't help but curve my lips from the bottom of my heart. Yes, congratulations to myself. Then can I pursue my sister openly now? Quinn's tone was full of uncontrollable excitement. I looked at Quinn and blinked. You still have to wait in line. I still want to enjoy a period of single life. Quinn's face darkened a bit. In the end, he still chuckled. Okay. I will obediently stay by my sister's side and watch my sister enjoy her single life. Now I just want to be alone with myself and think about what I really want. Run towards my future, 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 towards my future.